Hi guys, welcome back to another video in this channel. Today we're going to continue with the sci-fi helmet, and it's time that we jump into Zbrush and we get everything that we've been doing into into action, right? Like we now want to see how all of these drawings that we did are going to take place in our new composition. So I'm using this head. If you guys remember from the last video, this is like the general idea that we have. And what I'm going to be working today is, let's see how much we can advance. I'm going to be working on like the main shapes, just like getting to understand where and how the whole thing is going to connect. This is a very, very old technique. I've seen some people do a more refined technique nowadays where they would just like straight go into the clean setup of the helmet. I don't particularly like that setup as much unless you have like a really clear idea of what you're gonna do. I prefer doing this in a very like again rough sketch and then jumping into cleaning up the shapes. Especially, it also depends on the kind of like work that you're gonna do. I've talked about this before, but it really matters quite a bit whether you're doing this for production, like for a video game or a movie, or whether you're doing this for 3D printing or just for like a render. It's not the same to do things for like concept art than to do things for like actual film. I changed the position of my tablet so you can see me a little bit more over here. Hopefully it's not that bad. I'm just getting used to, oh my god, where my shortcuts. Oh no. See, that's the problem with like muscle memory. Your fingers kind of know where things are, and then when they're not in the place where they were before, it makes it a little bit harder. So what I activated this option down here that's called transparency, and I'm just gonna like very quickly rough out the shape of the helmet here. I need to go back, of course, and let's turn on symmetry with letter X. Seems like I destroyed it at one point. There we go. Now, we definitely want some breathing room here for the mouth and the eyes and stuff. We want to make sure that if we were to give this helmet to a character, it would sit comfortably on his or her head. So let's just push this. As you can see, I'm pushing the borders here. And I want this helmet to be not like super tight. Some people ignore like the eyes and in the ears and stuff like that. I don't recommend doing that. And let's dynamesh real quick. So dynamesh this, turn this off. I'm going to use B, T, and D is the shortcut for trimming dynamic. I'm going to start flattening out some shapes again. So I definitely want to have, if you guys remember from the sketch, this one right here, we have this sort of like, I really like this one right here, like the double X element. So I'm going to go with my Damien standard. And I'm going to like draw where I would expect this sort of like double X bicer to be present. So I guess something like that looks interesting. I'm just making sure that we are following the concept as well. I wouldn't say like as closely as possible, but angles and graphic shapes are really important when designing this kind of stuff because they guide the eyes, right? Like a good design will always like what's the word? It will always make the form and the shapes look better, right? So we're not just like adding stuff to make things look cool. I always like to follow the sort of like form follows function idea where I'm not adding things again just for them to look cool. I want them to be functional and to have a reason to exist. So in this case, the reason why we're not adding, for instance, any glass on the front of the character is because we would have the nose, right? Like that's where we would expect the nose to be. But that means that I still want to make sure that there's enough like a range of vision for the character. I don't want him to be blind or to have like a blind spot or anything. So something like that looks interesting. There we go. Then we have this sort of like a thing on the front, and here's where we're gonna go for like a really aggressive blocking. I'm gonna use my clay buildup. I really like using this one to very quickly start like sketching the shapes that I would imagine this thing to have. This was like this sort of like straight edges here. There's a very cool technique where you can like mask the area that you're working with and then invert the mask and literally just like scale things out like this. Dynamesh. And then just move this out. There's really not like, I mean, there's a lot of tips, tricks, and techniques to do this. I wouldn't say there's like one that's like the best. I've seen a lot of people do a lot of different things. And as always, the one that works for you, that's the best one. That's the one that's gonna make you go fast. You definitely want a technique that is fast enough for your like ideation process. Here I'm using the image standard with the Alt key selected so that you get the negative effect, and that way we get this sort of like blocky shapes, right? So since that's sort of like a muscly thingy, I think I want to like make this thing a little bit bigger. Trim dynamic I really like whenever I'm working with hard surface stuff, because it really flattens stuff up in a very nice way. I think I do want to have this sort of like accelerated shape right here. Something I like to do sometimes is add a little bit of form, just like a little bit of volume, so that when we go with the trim dynamic, it helps hold the volume a little bit better. So see how I'm creating that sort of like faceted look on the side of the helmet. Now helmets usually, especially in like sci-fi films, if you think about Iron Man, they'll usually like come out from the front. Actually, give me just 1 second. I have this very dusty Darth Vader helmet. There we go. So this is the Darth Vader helmet. It's like a replica that you can wear. I wore it on last Halloween, if you guys remember. And when you put it on, it's like this. So it's empty on the side, because otherwise it would be very difficult to put it on. Now I would imagine like the original, or like the big helmet, like if it was like an actual sci-fi helmet, you would probably have like the front part right here, like a bottom part or a back part, and then the little like hoodie thing, this one right here. But yeah, like that's usually how it works. If you even if you think about like the astronaut things, like they wear this sort of like glob or like fish tanks on top of their heads, and that's usually what they're going for. So in this case, I'm going to use my Damien standard, and a little bit based on this line that we have right here, we'll have like a couple of plates. So I would expect like the front plate to be something like this, and then here's where I'm expecting to have like the entrance to like the horn, or one of the horns. I would probably expect there to be like another section line right here, and probably here, like it makes sense. Here's where I need to always use this like fancy words, like the sculpture or the concept kind of talks to you, and you're like, where would it make more sense? And you're gonna get that sort of effects the more you work on this sort of things, right? So, for instance, I would expect like I think we did mention having like a couple of section lines, like on the back here. Again, I'm using this sort of like horn section as the main place to start with, and then this thing will probably go down like this, and there we go. I did like this sort of like elements that I added on one of the concepts, following again like the zygomatic arcs. I think arcs is the right word. So we're gonna add them right here, and a really nice technique again. Just add the volume of how you imagine the shape to be working. And then with trim dynamic, just polish it up a little bit. We're gonna clean these shapes. All of the shapes are gonna be cleaned up once we have like a really nice idea of how we want things to look. Now, you also should look for reference. We've always talked about how important reference is, and in this case in particular, since we're again I'm being inspired a little bit by Xenoblade, I know that the aesthetics of the game are not like super complex. Like I've seen some like animes and in Japanese games where the Gundams and stuff are like really fancy and really decorated, but there's others where they remain quite simple. So in this case, we're going for sort of this sort of like simplistic, hard surfacey but simplistic kind of look, a little bit cleaner, not super fancy. There we go, and that's the section there. Now again, we need to make sense of everything, right? So we're gonna have this thing right here. Like, what's gonna be this? Like this section right here, what's that gonna be? Is it gonna be like a negative shape? I think it could look cool as a negative shape. So I've seen this sort of like helmets and concepts where you see a little bit of the insides of the helmet like showing through that specific portion. So that could be it. Like we can add that sort of effect, and that's like a little plate where you would see like a couple of cables and stuff, and then this thing just like goes on top, right? So something like that. Then we have this one right here. What's that gonna be? Is that gonna be like another thing that's gonna come out, or is this just gonna be part of like this structural thing? That's all of those are questions that we need to definitely ask ourselves. We'll also need to create like the hole where this thing is gonna be positioned, something like this. I'm gonna show you a cool technique later on where we can do the cushiony things inside. Very cool. technique. Which, by the way, talking about techniques, if you guys are interested in learning about ZBrush and you want to learn all about this, please take a look at one of the sponsors that we have, which is Skillshare. Hey guys, Abraham here. I just wanted to remind you guys that we upload all of our courses to Skillshare. Skillshare is this amazing site where you can access a ton of different content to learn, improve, and grow as an artist. We have all of our courses available to watch and learn from right now in Skillshare. You can check the description down here, and Skillshare is offering 1 free month trial to their premium membership. With this membership, you're going to be able to access all of our courses and watch and learn all of the amazing things that we cover with all of the softwares. So, what are you waiting for? Check Skillshare down here below. There we go. So yeah, you can learn from Skillshare. It's a really cool software site, and there's that free option right there. So if you've never used ZBrush before and you saw this video and you're like, oh, that looks cool, I want to give it a shot, I recommend my Introduction to ZBrush 2022 course, which is the latest one related to ZBrush that I did, and it's very complete. There's a lot of cool techniques in there. You can get yourself acquainted with the software very quickly. So yeah, there we go. I think I definitely want to like play around a little bit here with the shapes as well. Just create like a couple of interesting planes for the whole thing. Now these pieces back here, I do think I also want to have like I want to have them coming out a little bit. So as you can see, very easy way, just create the line first and then add the volume. Like imagine how much volume these things are actually going to be like pulling out. And then with trim dynamic again, I really like trim dynamic for the sketching part of the process. Just like sharpen these things up like this. See that? That's gonna give us some very cool, interesting shapes. Again, they might not be the cleanest ones yet, but they're gonna give us a very nice idea of how we would expect. There's another cool technique that I can show you here, and it involves masking as well. So I'm gonna use masking here. Just mask this thing. And it's just a matter of like literally pushing this out, just like that. And when we trim dynamic this, just like smooth this thing out a little bit and trim dynamic, that's gonna clean up the shapes a little bit. Now, as you can see, we've only spent what, like 15 minutes, 12 minutes. We're 12 minutes in, and we already have like something that looks really interesting, I think. So yeah, that's a good shape for the basic shapes of the element. Now, if we take a look at the concept again, you're gonna see that other like things that we had, like there was like this sort of like muscly thingy here on the front. Again, easy way to do this. Maybe we can just like mask out an interesting shape right there, and then with my W key, just push this up and see which kind of shape looks interesting. I definitely want this to be kind of like a mouth. That looks cool. And later on, I can imagine having like some sort of like, I don't know, like a grid or something, right? Something like that could be cool. Or we can try like dots. Like that's the cool thing about this whole like ideation and sketching process. The fact that we can play around with different shapes and see what works and what doesn't work with the overall thing. One of the main things that we're definitely going to need are the horns. So let's add them already. I'm going to append a sphere. Let's select the sphere, scale it down, get it right here. And again, there's a lot of different brushes. I'm going to use my move brush. I'm a old school kind of guy. Just gonna Dynamesh. You know, they have this very nice flowy shape. Here's where happy little accidents can also occur. For instance, like I really like this sort of like accelerating shape going back, like an S shape. S shapes are always very aesthetic and they look quite nice. But on the front, it looks kind of weird, kind of like boring. So we can either play around and see if we can find like also a shape like on the front and side that looks interesting. That could work. Again, we're gonna replace this later on with other kind of stuff. Let's go VIN, which is the inflate brush, because I definitely want to give it a little bit more volume. And there we go. So So that gives us an interesting idea. Let's go see plugin, subtool master, and we're gonna say mirror. We're gonna mirror this on the x-axis. There we go. Let's play around with the angles. So let's turn X, so we can go with like a more open angle. We can go with like a back angle. Looks a little bit more interesting. This is one of those things that it's not really like super functional, because I wouldn't imagine this guy being on like a spaceship and with this like big horns just hitting around the cabin or something. So this is one of those things. Some people would go for like small horns to make them a little bit more functional so that they don't interfere, but look kind of wonky. So we're gonna go into like the fantasy, sort of like sci-fi fantasy realm, where things might not make as much like a scientific or engineering sense, but they look cool. So sometimes the cool factor is it's quite important. Again, let's try to look for a shape that looks interesting, especially here on the front. I really want to find something that looks cool. I think that looks cool. Probably flatter. There we go. That looks a little bit more interesting. So maybe like a flat side to the horns, and then a round thing on the end. These tips are definitely way too wide. So let's play around with the shapes as well. Let's make sure Dynamesh is turned on. And something like this looks interesting. Let's keep smoothing and just cleaning these things up a little bit more. Smoothing is really good to like make things a little bit like sharper, especially on the end. That looks good. Cool. So let's append now a cube, because I'm gonna do the little like earpiece that I've been like kind of like obsessed about when we first got that shape. I'm gonna show you another technique. So I'm gonna go Dynamesh to Dynamesh this thing. Let's make this flatter. And I know that the earpiece is going to be right about there. I'm going to press Control Shift, and we're going to go for our knife curve brush, which is really good. It's going to allow us to literally cut this thing like this. Very cool, right? So in a very fast way, we can create this very nice element right here. This is one of the newest like additions to the Zbrush like family, which is the cut brush or the knife brushes. They're quite recent, I would say. Probably like a year or a little bit more than a year, and they're really good. As you saw, they're really cool. And here's one thing we can do. For instance, we can just like, let's duplicate this, make it a little bit smaller, and that's gonna be like the connection point to the helmet, right? Because we don't want this thing to just like be floating around, and we can be like connected or just extrude it once more. Have like a really nice like flat edge there on the back, and it's a really nice and efficient way to create this sort of like sci-fi-ish shapes, which are just like complex, complex like little elements that make they just make like interesting visual silhouettes for the whole thing, right? So I'm gonna say C plugin, and we're gonna mirror this to the other side. There we go. So we go back. That's looking quite nice. Now I do remember thinking about like adding more than 4 horns. Like if we're gonna go sci-fi, let's freaking go sci-fi, right? So let's, for instance, let's duplicate this guys. Let's reset this guys right there. I'm just gonna hit Control Alt and duplicate. There we go. And we can make them smaller. And we'll have like a second set of horns. Like even interlinked, I think kind of like interlink would look interesting, right? Like something like that. That looks interesting, right? We don't want to make the visual thing too noisy or too intense, but it's cool. It's important to explore. That was one when I was in school. I had a class by a great guy. His name is Jared Krichevsky. He's a concept artist, and he does this like a lot of creepy stuff and things like that. He's really cool dude. And I remember one of the main feedbacks that I always got with my characters and creatures was you're not pushing the silhouette enough. Like you're making things way too simple, like a simple humanoid, like a simple horse, or like a simple dog. Like you're just doing like traditional, like naturalistic silhouettes. and he has like, go crazy, like you are completely free to do like random and weird stuff, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's it. Don't worry. I think when I first started, I was really scared of like messing up, and it was not him. It was another teacher that said polygons are free. Like you're not actually paying. Like if you were painting like an oil paint or like doing like traditional clay, like you're not paying for more material, right? So if you need to start over and you need to do like different things, just go for it. Go for it and see where that brings you, right? So yeah, that looks good. Let's go for now this like a main piece here on the front. So let's go append, cube. Here's again where the knife brush are going to be amazing. You're going to see why in just a second. So I'm going to position this roughly where I would expect this to be. Let's turn on transparency a little bit. I'm going to go with my knife brush, Control Shift, and I'm going to draw a curve following like the shape of the head. Oh. Or we can just like cut it out like this. I think I want to go for the sort of like more jaggedy edge. So see something like this. There we go. And then we can go to like a back view or like a bottom view. Unfortunately, well, I think no, we do have this sort of like we do have symmetry on. So that's a really cool thing that we can do. We can just work with symmetry. Let's cut that out, and then we're gonna redo. I'm gonna press Alt twice to get like that sharp angle and delete all of that things, and look at that. Pretty cool, right? Like in a very like fast way, we've created this shape. Now, does it match perfectly to what we had in mind? Not really, but this is again one of those kind of like happy little accidents where it doesn't look half bad, and we can play around with this and find like a position for this so that it works in an interesting way. I really like this shape. I think it really sells the sort of like a deer sort of shape, right? Like yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. I think we can go with this, but if we're gonna go with this shape, we definitely need to like clean up, especially this shape right here, like this one right here. It needs to kind of have like a similar visual language so that it matches. So if we have this sort of like angled effect, I'll probably do the same thing over here, kind of like this hexagon sort of shape. Okay, let's add a little bit of volume there, trim dynamic, and just clean this up. So I get this sort of like, again, even that, like that looks interesting as a, even like a separate piece, right? Like we can have like a cut there, and there's like this big U-shaped thing on the back. That looks interesting. And what I'm trying to, here's the important thing, that's why I wanted to make this series. We're not only following or using some of the tools that we normally use here inside of Zbrush. I want to like guide you through my thought process. And one thing that we're like, I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make sure all of the shapes, all of the like lines and forms flow forward. Like when you think, let's go to create a, when you think about like an antelope, right? This is like the sort of shape for the antelope. So to me, the shape is like going there, right? Like it's going forward like this. You would have like the eyes and the little nose and the mouth. Well, that's the kind of stuff that we're going for. Like every single thing, it's kind of like pushing forward, right? Like that's the shape language that we're doing. I remember a teacher, an anatomy teacher, talked about this, and he mentioned that this is sort of like the acceleration of the forms. So certain forms will accelerate or decelerate depending on how you like change everything. And right now, as you can see, everything is just like flowing forward, and it gives this very like sci-fi-ish effect, which I think it's benefiting the whole thing right here. So this will be another plate. Kind of looks like those kind of look like eyebrows, and these are going to be the glasses, right? So again, we mentioned that for the glasses, maybe we'll get this sort of like honeycomb like pattern. I'm just sketching it right now to just get a general idea of how this thing would look. This will eventually be in the texture, of course, but that's it. And then we just mentioned that this thing's going to be like a I think I've seen this in like in Iron Man's helmet. Iron Man. So if we take a look at Iron Man's helmet, yeah, it's actually right there on the mouth, right? So it's that thing right there. like that section where you see the like the connection, right, between the two elements. That could be it for us. Like this section could be it for us. This right here would definitely need to be its own little plate right there. That's it. I mean, that looks interesting. We're definitely gonna be adding like those small little details that you guys know and love about like sci-fi stuff. But again, I'm not too worried about those right now. I'm just thinking about the shape. Finally, before we wrap this up for today, one of the things that I will definitely recommend is once you're happy with something like this, take a look at the silhouette, right? Because sometimes we don't really analyze the silhouette as much, and we might think that it looks cool, but then it doesn't. So I'm gonna turn off the character right now. I'm just gonna focus on the helmet. Let's just do a little bit of cleanup here. All of this we will not have, right? Because that's the inside of the character, or where the character would. So there we go. And if I take a look at this thing right here, and I change my material to this sort of like a flat color, this is gonna really allow me to see the general like shapes and forms, and this is what's gonna tell me, hey, you know what, like it looks cool, but we can maybe change this. For instance, one thing I'm definitely seeing is the ears. They're a little bit too close together. So if we do this, for instance, that immediately changes the way that the silhouette reads there. And it's a very simple like movement. Yes, we might need to modify a couple of things so that this fits a little bit better there. But I know that from a silhouette point of view, this makes for a more interesting silhouette. It kind of looks like a tree with branches and stuff, which I really like. Same for the side view. Like if I take a look at the side view and I see like an interesting silhouette here, that to me tells me that, hey, we're in a good direction, right? Like I see this brakes and the horns going up, like the whole shape moving forward. And yeah, I mean, it might not be the best design in the galaxy, right? But it is something that's definitely promising, and I'm sure that we can get a really cool render out of. Render textures and everything. We're gonna do every single thing here. So yeah, this is it for now, guys. As I mentioned, I'm just gonna keep pushing this series. I don't want to worry too much about it. I think that was one of my issues with past series. I was like too preoccupied of like, oh, I need to finish this in like 2 or 3 sessions, otherwise people are gonna hate it. I think you guys appreciate the effort, of course, and the content. So hopefully, even though it might take a couple more like lessons or videos, you'll get the full picture by the end. So just be patient. Make sure to leave a comment. Those are the things that keep me going. When I read the comments and I see that people are interested in and that they like where things are going, that always it's very encouraging to me. Someone mentioned, I think it was Mikkel, one of our fans, that the lighthouse is dead. It's not dead. We're gonna work on it on the live stream, which is gonna be, I think I said it was gonna be on Tuesday, but something just came up for tomorrow, Tuesday, so it's probably gonna be on Wednesday, okay guys? But it's gonna be this week, so just stay tuned. There's gonna be a live stream. You can jump in, ask some questions, let's have some fun, let's work on the lighthouse a little bit, and yeah, we'll just keep on working. So that's it for now. Let's make sure to save this real quick. We don't want to what's the word, we don't want to have a, let's create a new folder. Let's call this sci-fi, and right here we're gonna call this, I think it was, we had a code name for this one, right? ADAX. So it's ADAX. That's the ADAX helmet. Cool. So yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Well, make sure to like, share, subscribe. You guys know the drill. And I'll see you back on the next video or on the live stream. Depends on what comes first. But yeah, I'll be around. Make sure to leave a like, share, subscribe, and thank you very much. Bye-bye.